On this Tuesday night, Canadians who feel compelled to help Ukraine.
It was hard to watch it and not do anything about it.
The dangerous missions they're taking on and the horrors discovered in places where Russian forces have withdrawn. Manitobans get ready for what's coming.
Got to prepare for the worst.
As forecasters predict the worst blizzard in decades. The manhunt underway in New York City after a shooting inside a subway at rush hour. Turbulence for Flair Airlines, why the low-cost carrier's operating license is up in the air. And his voice was memorable and unmistakable.
A guy walks into a bar!
Remembering comedian Gilbert Gottfried.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is warning of a new stage of terror in his country, and Russia's president says peace talks have reached a dead end. There was never any peace to keep. Vladimir Putin's bombardment of Ukraine has now gone on for 48 days. One of the latest claims that has not been verified is that Russian forces used a drone to drop chemical weapons on the port city of Mariupol, which has been under siege for weeks. Western officials, including the U.S., are investigating but cannot confirm anything.
Use of biochemical weapons against the people of Ukraine would elicit a response, not just from the United States, but from the international community. What that response would look like from us or from anybody else, we just don't know right now.
What is becoming clear is the scale of the killings in areas where Russian forces have now withdrawn. Ukraine's president said today there are thousands and thousands of victims and hundreds of cases of brutal torture. Crystal Gomansingh has our top story tonight, and a warning: it does include graphic images that are difficult to watch.
Under the watchful eye of French forensic experts, Ukrainians unearthed a second mass grave in Bucha. When the number of dead got too high, it was important to bury them, says this church leader. The church property was used, he says, because we couldn't get to the cemetery. They were shooting at cars. More than 400 bodies have been recovered from around Bucha. They must be identified, their wounds documented, and reburied.
We have now a lot of job, unfortunately, with war crimes against humanity.
If war crimes have occurred, Ukraine's prosecutor general says those responsible will be held accountable. Vladimir Putin, however, called the scene in Bucha fake and used air quotes when describing Russia as the aggressor. At a public display with ally Belarus, Putin said Russia had to defend the Russian speakers of eastern Ukraine. Many Ukrainian cities targeted and civilians killed in the fighting are Russian-speaking. Kramatorsk in the Donbass, home of the gutted train station. Mariupol under siege for weeks in the south. The Azov Battalion, a group founded as a far-right ultra-nationalist volunteer infantry, is fighting on the Ukrainian side in Mariupol. It posted a video on its Telegram channel late Monday showing a number of soldiers and civilians who appear to be ill, claiming Russian forces hit them with a poisonous or potentially poisonous substance. That claim has not been verified, but Western officials say if it's true, it could change the course of the war.
The Russians have certainly proven more than willing to use chemical weapons when it suited them in the past.
Use of chemical weapons is abhorrent. It does cross a line.
The UK and the US are among those working to determine if a chemical agent was used. But without access to the site, it's difficult to prove. American military intelligence says control of the critical port city is contested, but Ukraine continues to fend off Russian forces for now. Crystal Gomansingh, Global News, London.
We know some people have gone to Ukraine from Canada and other countries to join the fight against Russian forces. Governments, including Canada's, advise against that, but it's happening anyway. Others have gone not to fight, but to help, to do what they can to get supplies in and people out. Our Jeff Semple recently returned from Ukraine. Here's his report on the Canadians answering Ukraine's pleas for help.
Canadian Lex Brokowski is embarking on a dangerous journey.
packing this van full of supplies, from baby food to body armor, and driving it to the front lines in Ukraine.
Watching it from my home in Canada was just driving me nuts. Like, it was hard to watch it and not do anything about it.
6 weeks ago, Brkovsky was here on his boat in Nova Scotia. The lobster fisherman moved to Canada 30 years ago, but grew up in Ukraine. Within days of Russia's invasion, he flew to Poland and met a local aid group looking for drivers willing to travel to the front lines.
They need people that are willing to go more than they need money, I think, because there isn't too many people that are, ready to drive to places like that.
And for good reason. Last month, Brkovsky delivered aid to this city near the Russian border. He then filled his van with women and children and was driving them out when his vehicle came under attack.
All we've seen is just explosions right in front of us.
He and hundreds of others were trapped. He spoke to Global News from their shelter.
We tried to get out 3 times yesterday, but every time we get anywheres or right away under constant shelling. There's absolutely no power, no heat, no very limited water supply.
Finally, after 5 days of failed attempts, he managed to escape. Back to the relative safety of Lviv in western Ukraine. After a few hours of sleep, he headed back to the front lines with another shipment of aid.
We need this help.
An advisor to the Ukrainian president had this message for other Ukrainian Canadians.
For the many leaders of the Ukrainian diaspora in Canada, maybe it's time to come to Ukraine.
Global News met many Canadians answering that call from the Ukrainian government from all walks of life.
I was actually, in a way, pleasantly surprised that so many Canadians have come here.
This Canadian-Ukrainian entrepreneur is now handling logistics and procurement for Ukraine's volunteer defense forces. This millwright from BC isn't even Ukrainian, but he's taking 6 weeks unpaid leave to deliver aid and rescue civilians.
These people have been fighting for their democracy, and I just couldn't stand for the Russians to come back and take that all away from them.
Ottawa is advising Canadians to avoid all travel to Ukraine. But these volunteers say staying home wasn't an option. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
There is a storm brewing over the centre of Canada, and Environment Canada is warning people to take it seriously. It's issued alerts for a large section of southern Saskatchewan, Manitoba and Ontario. Manitoba is expected to get up to 50 centimetres of snow with wind gusts of up to 90 kilometres an hour. That will create whiteout conditions and make travel dangerous. Brittany Greenslade reports on how Manitobans are preparing.
Shopping carts are piled high as southern Manitobans rush to stock up ahead of the storm.
Hopefully get things like milk and fresh fruit, and I'll see what else there is.
This morning I went and bought a small propane stove.
Some store shelves are already bare. No milk, eggs or bread left. Lettuce and fresh vegetable aisles have also been cleared, and many places are out of bottled water as people stock up.
Basic groceries that we're going to need just in case we do get snowed in.
Everybody's kind of, trying to, get a little ahead of the game, but, got to prepare for the worst.
And to hunker down at home. For the first time in 25 years, school divisions in Winnipeg are considering closing down and getting ahead of the storm. And daycares are concerned kids may get stranded.
It's going to be crazy. So we're definitely keeping an eye on that. I don't want to host a sleepover for a bunch of preschoolers without their parents.
The impending storm is already drawing comparisons to a generational spring blizzard from 25 years ago that saw cars buried in Winnipeg streets and emergency vehicles stuck.
The priority is to make sure that all of our critical services don't fail. If we need to start stationing snowplows in front of fire paramedic stations so ambulances and fire trucks can get out, then that's what we're going to do.
While keeping everyone safe ahead of the holiday weekend. Brittany Greenslade, Global News, Winnipeg.
Well, Manitobans are used to winter storms. What's in store with this one? Global News meteorologist Ross Hull is tracking it for us tonight.
Hi, Donna. Well, a couple of features that make this storm stand out. The first its potency, where we've got Arctic air coming up against warm air. We've got a powerful system with heavy amounts of snow on the way and strong winds. The second factor, the longevity. This system will be impacting southern Manitoba, southeastern Saskatchewan, likely into early Friday. You can already see the heavy snow through the Dakotas, the snow now starting to cross the international border as this system heads north. We've got winter storm warnings in Winnipeg, blizzard warnings as you head west. The visibility is expected to be near zero in these areas, and heavier amounts of snow possible as well, especially some of those terrain features like the Turtle Mountains and Riding Mountains. Let's take a look at this system. It intensifies as we head into tomorrow morning. You can see the tightly packed isobars representing strong winds. Those are areas of equal barometric pressure. A bit of a lull in the precipitation possible across southeastern portions of Manitoba into Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday evening, but the system re-intensifies on Thursday. How much snow to expect? For Winnipeg, it looks to be in that 30 to 50 centimeter range. Remember, I told you those surface features? Well, with some enhancements, some areas could see 50, possibly close to 80 centimeters of snow. And of course, we don't need that snow to melt quickly. It's the peak of the spring flood season. Thankfully, it looks like temperatures will not be warming up anytime soon, at least for the next few days, Donna, which is some good news. But first, we need to get through all that heavy snow.
All that snow. Global News meteorologist Ross Hull, thanks. Canada's top doctor confirms what's obvious. The country is in the sixth wave of COVID-19.
All across Canada, doesn't matter where you are, it's very likely that Omicron variant, the BA2 sublineage, is spreading quite widely in your community.
With another holiday weekend approaching, health officials are reminding Canadians indoor gatherings come with risks. Jamie Maracher reports.
Maya Parikh is done waiting for COVID to calm down to spend time with her family over the holidays.
We feel it is a kind of a pleasure to see them after a long time. So this is kind of a very important for us.
But gathering is not without its risks, according to Canada's top health official.
Doesn't matter where you are in Canada right now, I would advise getting that booster shot and masking and improving ventilation.
Dr. Theresa Tam stopped short of recommending provinces bring back mandates. Only Quebec and PEI are keeping masking measures in place until after the holidays. On Monday, Philadelphia became the first major U.S. city to bring mandatory masking back ahead of Passover and Easter gatherings.
I don't see us going back into any more really very restrict kinds of restrictions, but you always have to have the flexibility.
As Canada's numbers for third doses have languished below 50% for months, doctors here hope to see the federal government recommend a change to the definition of fully vaccinated from 2 doses to 3.
They're in the hospitals because they're inadequately protected, and we're trying to, at the same time, figure out how to save the hospitalizations and prevent them from happening and threatening our healthcare system. And the answer is right in front of our face.
Instead, the focus remains on encouraging a third shot. The most recent recommendation is anyone over 18 should get a booster, and 12 to 17-year-olds may, 6 months after their second dose. Precautions Alan White and his wife Joanne are confident in.
We're all vaxxed and boosted, so we should be safe.
This is awesome. Celebrating, but with the expectation we've learned enough and done enough to keep ourselves healthy. Jamie Maracher, Global News, Toronto.
In the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has apologized but is ignoring calls to resign after being fined for breaching COVID-19 lockdown rules when he attended a birthday party thrown for him at 10 Downing Street.
I myself fell short when it came to observing the very rules which the government I lead had introduced.
The country's finance minister was also fined. Both are also accused of misleading Parliament. The party in June of 2020 happened when the rules banned indoor gatherings of more than 2 people. It was one of several parties held at the time. Johnson first denied there'd been any and later admitted there were parties, but he hadn't attended any of them. New York City on high alert. Coming up, the hunt for the gunman who opened fire inside a packed subway car. After a rush hour shooting in the New York City subway this morning, police are still searching for the suspect and asking for the public's help finding him. The gunman, they say, was a dark-skinned man wearing a neon construction vest who opened fire inside a packed subway car.
10 people were injured by gunfire, and an additional 13 were either
injured as they rushed to get out of the train station, or they suffered smoke inhalation.
Witnesses state the male opened up 2 smoke grenades, tossed them on the subway floor, brandishes a Glock 9mm handgun. He then fired that weapon at least 33 times, striking 10 people. The male then fled the scene.
Police say none of the injuries are life-threatening. They say they found a handgun, a hatchet, fireworks, smoke canisters, and gasoline at the scene, and a key to a U-Haul, which led to someone they describe as a person of interest. They're not calling him a suspect. They are asking the public for cell phone videos and eyewitness accounts of the incident. Flair Airlines has been credited for putting downward pressure on sky-high ticket prices, but as Ross Lord explains, it could soon be grounded.
At a time when the price of just about everything is going up, these air travelers cherish the low rates offered by Flair Airlines.
It only costed me $89 for me to get this ticket from Vancouver to Montreal. And yeah, I think it's totally worth it.
If you are flying domestically, it's very cheap and it's good to fly often.
But the airline regulator, the Canadian Transportation Agency, says Flair may not be Canadian. A preliminary decision on the issue obtained by Global News says there is no evidence currently before the agency that Flair is controlled, in fact, by Canadians. The regulator says a private investment firm from Miami, 777 Partners, controls the board of directors, provides financing, and supplies aircraft under lease. Flair has until May 3rd to fix its arrangement or possibly have its operating license suspended, a predicament that means uncertainty for customers.
Very dangerous. High risk, and if anybody's, kind of risk averse, like I said, credit card, buy insurance, and make sure you're ready for some turbulence along the way.
Flair tells Global News it's working with the CTA to resolve the agency's concerns. It's also pleading for an 18-month exemption to drum up investment from Canadian sources, so it can, in the words of its application, continue offering low fares and service to historically underserved communities for all Canadians. This passenger advocate says a temporary exemption could work.
In the event that it goes out of business for any reason, cease to operate, passengers who already bought tickets are rebooked on flights of other airlines at Flair's cost.
In addition to hundreds of jobs, there are millions of tax dollars on the line. Flair has received more than $11 million in federal grants. Not a good look now that the government's airline regulator is on the verge of shutting it down. Transport Canada says its minister, Omar Al-Gabra, is assessing Flair's bid for more time. More uncertainty for Canadian travelers looking for affordable and reliable options. Ross Lord, Global News, Windsor, Nova Scotia.
Feeling forgotten ahead, the Afghan refugees losing hope. Countless Afghan refugees still face danger and uncertainty nearly 8 months after fleeing the Taliban takeover of their country. Canada vowed to welcome at least 40,000 of them. About 10,000 have arrived in the country. Mike Drolet reports on those who are still waiting and losing hope.
On a recent day in Kabul, the Taliban raised its giant flag over a large gathering of supporters, an event journalist Zair Khan Yad once would have attended. But last August, the Taliban made it clear his progressive views on women's rights and free speech were no longer welcome in Afghanistan.
The Taliban come out from a armored Land Cruiser, and they beat me. They took my phone, and also they took my cameras, and they beat me on gunpoint.
Yad escaped to Pakistan with his wife and was invited to apply for resettlement in Canada. 6 months later, their Pakistani visas as well as their savings have run out, and their hope is dwindling. Abdul Rahman is also waiting for Immigration Canada to process his application. Meanwhile, he's now homeless, stateless, and broke, and his family is surviving in Pakistan on one meal a day.
After more than 4 months, our financial situation, also mentality situation, we are here with a big depression.
Dozens of Afghan interpreters held a hunger strike on Parliament Hill 2 weeks ago, demanding the government do more to help those left behind overseas. The Federal Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Ministry acknowledges the process has been slow, but maintains the bottleneck of cases is not Canada's fault, citing issues with security screenings and documentation. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the Taliban is throwing up obstacles.
The situation over there is challenging in terms of just getting people out of Afghanistan, given the way the Taliban is preventing and obstructing people fleeing to safety.
Once they're sort of stuck in this third country or third place, they're really at the mercy of governments, wherever.
The interpreters Global News spoke with say they feel forgotten. They can't go back to Afghanistan. They're wearing out their welcome in Pakistan. They're past the point of desperation. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
Next, remembering Gilbert Gottfried's distinctive voice in comedy.
Oh, come right in. Don't let the fact that my door's closed dissuade you in any way from entering my office.
He had the kind of voice that was instantly recognizable. Gilbert Gottfried has died. He did stand-up comedy for 50 years and starred alongside Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop 2. The comedian's family says he died after a long illness. Gottfried brought a number of characters to life. He was the signature voice of the Aflac duck in commercials until he was fired. His humor could sometimes be crude and often controversial. Among his other most recognizable voice roles was in the 1992 Disney movie Aladdin.
I can't believe it. I just don't believe it. We're never going to get a hold of that stupid land. Just forget it. Look at this. Look at this. I'm so ticked off that I'm molting.
Gottfried voiced the role of Iago, the villainous sidekick parrot in Aladdin. Today, his family asked his fans to please keep laughing as loud as possible in Gilbert's honor. He was 67 years old. That is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Winnipeg's Provencher Bridge before the storm. We'd love to see your Canada. Please email it to us. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.